Welcome to our ninth and final video on our series on international macroeconomics. In this video, we're going to study the small open economy model with production, and we're going to conduct a series of comparative statics exercises. These exercises consist of changing one of the variables and seeing how the economy reacts to this change. We're going to conduct three exercises. The first one where we change the international interest rate, the second one where we change government spending, and a final one where we change productivity. Let's start. So in our first exercise, we're increasing the international interest rate. The first question we're going to have is what the effect of that's going to be on output. Well, output is going to go up because remember that in this model, output is determined by the supply curve. And as the interest rate is increasing, you're going to have a movement along the supply curve. We see that going from this point to this point. This movement along the supply curve is going to increase output. Now, what's happening with demand? Investment goods, it's going to go down. Investment goes down because of the higher interest rate, making it more costly to invest. But the effect on consumption is going to be ambiguous. This is different from what's happened before when we had a closed economy. In a closed economy, consumption goes down because at higher interest rate, consumers have a higher incentive to save. But now, output and hence income is increasing because of the effect on the supply curve. Now, because income is increasing, that can increase consumption as well. And so as a consequence, the effect on trade and the current account is ambiguous as well. Here we should remember what we covered in our second video where we defined the current account and related it to savings. Remember that the current account and net exports are a reflection of the investment or savings deficit. Now in this economy, we know that output is going up, that's income going up, that's going to increase savings. Now we also know that investment is going down, which also generates an increase in the savings surplus of the economy. Now the final answer is going to depend on what happens to consumption. If consumption goes up a lot, that can undo the changes in Y and can actually make the current account and net exports to go down. But we should know by now that that is unlikely to occur. There are two reasons to think that at the end of the day, current account and net exports are going to go up. The first reason is that the effect on consumption, it's moderated by the increase in the interest rate. So yes, there is higher output and you want to consume more from that output, but interest rates are higher, which forces you to save more, and higher savings are reflected in a higher current account surplus. On the other hand, we know that even though output is going up and that's going to increase consumption, the consumer wants to consumption smooth. So the consumer wants to save part of that increase in output for the future. So we will expect that yes, consumption might even increase, but that increase, if it happens, is going to be small relative to the increase in output. And so with output increasing and investment going down, we expect the current account to go up, and that is an increase in net exports. Okay, so that's our first exercise. Now, the second exercise is going to be a government expenditure increase. So the effect now is going to be a bit more complicated because this increase in government expenditure is going to affect directly both demand and supply. Let's go through it. The first thing to realize is that as you increase government expenditure, you need to increase taxes, whether today or in the future, but taxes have to go up. As a consequence, there is a negative wealth effect on consumers that's going to increase labor supply. And as labor supply is increasing, there is an increase in output supply. Now recall, because output here is supply driven, the increase in output that we're seeing from Y1 to Y2, it's entirely driven by this shift in the output supply curve. Notice that the interest rate has not changed because it's given by the international markets. So at this same interest rate, you are increasing how much output there is because of the additional labor supply. Now, what's happening with demand? Well, we know that demand has to go up. This is the typical mechanism by which output goes up or demand for output goes up because there is more demand for goods and services by the government. Now, the interest rate is fixed, and because of that, there is no crowding out of investment. And so we expect the multiplier to be of at least 1 on domestic demand. The reason is that government expenditure is going up, but that is increasing output Because output is increasing, we expect consumption to increase, and this increase is not moderated by changes in the interest rate. So we expect absorption to go up. As a consequence, we're going to have then an ambiguous effect on the current account. Output is going up, but absorption is going up. The net effect is going to depend entirely on the strength of the income effect on labor supply. If you think about it, if there is no income effect on labor supply, then there wouldn't be a change in output supply. I'm sorry. Because there wouldn't be that effect, output wouldn't have changed. But you will still have an increase in absorption because you will still have the increase in government spending. So notice that as you have that increase in government spending, absorption goes up for certain. Unless there is a big change in labor supply and hence a big change in output supply, this arrow is going to be small. And so we actually expect the current account to go down. So that is a larger deficit. And this makes sense. If there is higher demand for goods and services inside the country, but there is not a higher output of goods and services in the country, then goods and services are going to have to be imported from abroad. And that's going to reduce net exports and reduce the current account. So that's the effect of the government expenditure change. Now the last one we have is an increase in current productivity. Now, as before, we need to see what's going to happen to output supply. Similarly than before, the output supply is going to expand, is going to shift outwards, but now the reason is a bit different. As productivity increases, there is higher demand for labor, which shifts output supply up for any interest rate. Now, the outcome of this is that at the same interest rate that we had before, output goes up. Now, because the interest rate is fixed, just as before, investment does not move. But consumption is going to increase because output is going up. Now, this increase in consumption is stronger than the one we had in the previous case with the government spending, because in the previous case, we had taxes going up as well. So yes, output is going up and that helps consumption, but we also had taxes going up and that hurts consumption. Here we only have the effect of output going up. So then what's the effect on trade on the current account? Well, it turns out we can actually show unambiguously that the current account is going to go up. So net exports are going to go up. And the reason is that even though absorption is going up because of the higher consumption, we know that output is going to go up more than how much absorption goes up. The reason is actually very straightforward, and we've mentioned it a lot in the past. The change in output is higher than the change in absorption because of consumption smoothing. The agent wants to save part of the additional output for future consumption, and so the change in absorption is lower than the change in output. Because of that, the country now has a surplus of goods relative to what it had before. That surplus of goods are exported, thus increasing net exports, thus increasing the current account. And that is it. With that, we've reached the end of this series of lectures on international macroeconomics and also the end of our course of intermediate macroeconomics at Western University. I hope you've enjoyed these videos and that they prove useful in your study. Don't forget to, of course, ask any questions that you have, whether it's on the forums or via email.